Hey everybody, welcome to episode 48 of Building with Sand. It is Monday, April 15th, 2013. I've been on here a couple hours now, an hour and a half, working on the garden, the first floor mainly. I'll take a tour a little of what I've been working on. I've got the main staircase in. There's a good chance I'm going to replace a lot of it with different stuff, but well, I might keep the sides the same. I'm thinking about putting a stripe of quartz up the front. I'm not sure yet. We're going to bring the grass out further in the end, but right now this is how it's going to be, and it's going to curve around this way. I want it to be kind of far out on the sides. The problem we have is this building, so it might just come up and go around it. I'm not sure yet. I'll do something to make it flow through. For sure, it'll be easier on the other side. We have a lot more space. So in the front here, we're gonna have little fountains. I use a dispenser. I think a dispenser actually makes it look like a fountain with redstone lamp, and then use quite a bit of quartz as accents with all what's going on. There's going to be some things coming off the front here once the green stuff starts going in. I'm thinking I'm going to do this with the quartz in each of the little inlets. I haven't done it yet. I think we might do that today, or we'll work on... I'm wanting to work on the second floor in this episode, and I will come fill this in as we get later on. I might have to go and mine out some more quartz, or I'm not sure if I have any at my base. So I'll have to go find that out. But I'm running out here. I'm using quite a bit. Pillars in the front. I've been looking at this here in the second floor, and thinking potentially of widening these, so going like this. Having some lag for some reason, but going like that, and then having this be a pillar. Like so. And then we'd have pretty open, wide open archways on the second floor. So I'm not too sure yet. It might look better like that. It might not. I think what we should work on today is working on the inner structure, and because that's something Mike wants to do while I talk. What I want to do is have a bunch of sandstone. That might be enough for now. Probably not. I want to go down here and put in some pillars. They're just going to be the idea is they're going to be like structural. And they will go up to the second floor. And this I'll mess with later, but I want them to be made out of smooth sandstone. This is just a placeholder. Actually, I'm thinking doing a series of smooth and regular. Now to get out of here, so I'm slowly walling myself in. So I just got done watching some of the Minecraft UHC series. If anybody out there knows the Minecraft guys, are a big group of Minecraft YouTubers. They do a series called Ultra Hardcore. They're on season 9. It's pretty exciting. Definitely worth a watch if you're interested in that kind of thing. Okay. Hopefully this isn't actually this this stone is going to be replaced, I think, with sandstone. We're at minimum. Yeah, I'll probably replace it with sandstone. Problem is, I'm not exactly sure. I'm gonna get going here, so I want to make this kind of even looking. And then these. Hopefully, that audio kind of bug delay is only in my end. So we'll replace that one, and then it'll be even. And once we get up here, I'll show you what we're going to do. Well, that didn't work how I wanted it to. This is a large building, and it's made quite a lot of bit of sand. So I want it to look like that, even though you know, it's going to be hollow, pretty much, that it looks like it has a significant amount of support structure going on inside of it. So yeah, keep working on this. So last episode had a question from the Minecraft LPer Pi is too cool, who, if you've been following me, you may have seen comments on some of my videos, or I've mentioned in several things. He asked where I get my inspiration, and the short answer is I don't have a good answer for that. But no, there's, I guess, there'd be sort of a, I guess I'd have a train of thought for, I'm not really sure how to explain it, but I guess it'd be best to explain why I'm doing a series called Building with Sand, and why it's themed how it is. I guess it's a multifaceted sort of thing. When this server started, let's see, where that tower is, on the other side of that hill right there is the spawn on the server. And over there, can't see, is where I set up my first base. And the idea was I wanted to build in, before we reset the server in 1.2 or I think it was Minecraft 1.2, we reset the server for 1.3 or something like that. And prior to that, I was living in a very small area that was kind of, there was a lake and there was a river on the other side, and there was a taiga and a forest, and in that whole area I was operating, and I built a giant igloo and lived in that out of snow and some stuff. And so I had a bunch of different ideas for what I wanted to do once we reset the server. And I wanted to build, like, I was really considering doing something where what was it? I wanted to build like a floating island in the sky, starting in the area of what's it called? I'm telling a story, I forget. Extreme Hills biome. So I build a building on top of the Extreme Hills biome, and then you know, just dig out the mountain underneath and leave floating islands, and I was going to chain them together. And that didn't really work out. I just got tired of digging them out, and I ended up once I did a little exploring. I went around and I found the desert here and wandered around through it and discovered that it was actually made of made up of one long stretched out desert, and it had 3 villages in it, as you've seen, which I called, in the end I named Poorsville. Old Town was the first one I worked on, and Poorsville, and then Central, and so I found those 3 deserts, or those 3 villages, and decided I was going to do something about them. And there. And so I had had an idea for a long time that I was going to build I wanted to really build a city and fill it with villagers and do all that stuff and see what I could get away with. It turned out in the end that Minecraft is really awful villager AI and stuff, and the way villagers work, and putting them, convincing them to live in places and do certain things is actually a nightmare. And so I've actually avoided doing a lot of that. I do have a lot of villagers that I've grown in vats and stuff, but at the same time, it's become something that I've kind of started to ignore. But I'm kind of digressing. So I wanted to build a city, by combining all 3 of the villages, and that's why I went around and I first of all went and I walled up all the villages in some fashion so that the zombies wouldn't kill all of the villagers. And then after that, I decided to build the palace. The palace was the first building I built around here, and it was actually just a side project that I was working on while I was building my castle in the sky. And it turned out that it was actually way more interesting. And so while building the castle, I went on the internet and Googled and looked for images of Middle Eastern palaces, and I was thinking of things like called Taj Mahal and different places, and I kind of cobbled together an idea of kind of how some palaces look like. Generally very square. It would have like an outcropping with archways and always domes and things like that, and minarets, and made the palace. It's changed a lot since originally. Probably the only other buildings after that I had built, just screwing around over here, was this pyramid here, which in its original incarnation looked a little different, and because I needed another portal to get from where I was living over here quicker. And at some point after that, I decided that I was going to actually make it a city. At first, it wasn't like it is. I think it wasn't an idea until after I built the palace, really. I'd say that was towards the end of last year, and I wanted also to do LPs at the time, and I was thinking about doing a Minecraft one. I was screwing around with like other stuff, other games that were more interesting to me. I think I was doing Resident Evil at first, and that turned out to be not a very good game. And so eventually I ended up doing an actual Minecraft LP, and I had some stuff built. I had put in some, I put the walls in the cities, and I put in I think I had this building. Yeah, I definitely had the museum done, and I had both museums done. That museum over there I just built by scratch. I just went and copied one and I modified it to my own uses. That was the original idea for the city, was that there was no inspiration really. I was just gonna take what was already Minecraft designs and fences. Original, like what was originally Minecraft designs, and just kind of extrapolate them and go from there. I don't think we didn't really have any viewers for a while at that point. The first thing we built was the grocery store, and I was still kind of figuring out exactly what to do in terms of you know, how the series should be and what I was doing with it. Didn't really have a whole lot of inspiration. It was kind of like, well, I want to build a desert city because we're in a desert, and I had not really thought about it before. So generally, whenever I want to build something, first of all, I think of what should go in the city. Original plans were to do stuff that would be for like a semi-actual city. We would have all the amenities, you know, of a big city. We'd have places for people to live. We would have transit, which were the roads and the nether things. We'd have, you know, entertainment, so we'd have museums, and we'd have to have places to buy stuff, so that's why I built the store. Also, we had the pumpkin pie factory was done. The reason I built the pumpkin pie factory was because of the patch that introduced pumpkin pie. So that was a thing that already existed, and it the design was sandstone because we was building everything out of sandstone for the pumpkin pie factory. At the same time, there was no real inspiration for it. I just kind of looked at factories and went from there. Wanted something with smokestacks and a sloped roof, and that's really what we ended up with. It wasn't until that I started really thinking about the city and building things like the stables and, you know, going from I'd say after the stables, going into the factory. Not the factory, the fort. The fort was a real place where I actually started thinking about the series. The inspiration for the fort was I wanted something that looked like it needed to look like a Foreign Legion fort, sort of combined with like North African kind of forts left over from like World War II and stuff. So that's what the design of the fort originally was. And I think as far as I could get it to be, it's kind of what it ended up looking like, so I'm actually pretty happy with that. And that kind of inspired me to start building things in the city that actually looked like they were actually desert-like buildings that would be the sort of thing that you'd actually see in the real world, you know, desert. Around, you know, different places in the world, kind of historical places. So that's why I started getting designing things that looked more like that. And I'm gonna have to do something about this, but yeah, I'll do that now. So that inspired me to do more deserty things, and that's kind of what led to the bazaar and the wall over there. Like the bazaar, I never have mentioned any of the names of these places. Like the palace is Al-Faltik, AL space FALTIK. The bazaar I called the Grand Bazaar. We did actually name the fort. I don't think I had a name for the wall over there, but you know, the wall over there was based off Petra, which is in modern day. Remember, but you just search for that, and that's where I get inspiration from. Some more sandstone, but it really made me start thinking of what I wanted things to look like. We started getting more of these, like the Nubian pyramids, and I guess going back to the actual question of where do I get my creativity, it's or inspiration. I don't exactly remember. I'm sorry, the actual question, but a lot of it leads back to my actual why I can sit here and think I want to do something in the desert and come up with ideas based on real world stuff, but I guess it has kind of to do with my background. I grew up in the Southern California desert, so I always considered myself to be a desert person, and sort of had a lot of pride about regarding that for most of my life. Still kind of do. And trying to keep train of thought while I work on new stuff. And so I kind of had a feeling of what kind of desert stuff is like generally. And in the past, I have studied about quite a bit of deserts, and just for whatever reasons. The university I graduated from, the University of North Texas, I studied history. It was mainly it was a mixture of mostly military history, but military history of my focus was actually the military history of European military history between the years of 1789, which is the French Revolution, to 1945, which is when World War II ended. And that was because I liked the period of imperialism and balance of power, and things like the French Revolution, the German unification, the unification of Italy, the Prussia, the Austro-Prussian, the Franco-Prussian wars, yes, even things as far as the Russo-Japanese War, early modern wars, when wars became modern, things regained, when things like the Gatling gun and would lead to ultimately the machine gun, and we had rifles, and war became a lot more bloody, and it became more wars of maneuver versus wars of attrition like in the past. So a lot of things happened in that time period that I was really interested in. And by studying that, I always got bits of things like African, at times I'd studied the history of the Holy Roman Empire and things like Spain, and how Spain used to be part of the Holy Roman Empire till the Holy Roman Empire was split into the Austrian Empire and the Spanish Empire by the Holy Roman Emperor, I forget his name, but so for a while it was actually 1492, all of the in lower Spain, in the area of Granada, all of the Muslims and the Jews and whoever else were expelled from Spain by that queen. And it was around the same time as that the Spanish, I'm gonna say around the same time as the when the Spanish Armada was destroyed, and there was because of that, I want to say, losing my train of thought here about that. But there used to be, prior to that, prior to when the Muslims, the Islamic religion was expelled from Spain in 1492, there was a huge, I mean, there's just still to this day a lot of Islamic influences in Spain, so that's kind of something I learned about Middle Eastern and desert cultures, like, and through studying things like the Crusades and all that stuff, which I've done independently and through for whatever reason. But, for example, a huge, very, very famous mosque in Spain, the Hagia Sophia, was originally a Christian, which originally was a Christian church, and became a mosque eventually. But to this day, I mean, it's still a mosque. But you know, there's a I just really over time just developed a taste for just appreciation for Middle Eastern architecture, and the reasoning is that things like in a lot of Middle Eastern culture has, I mean, almost all of it is very has a lot of Islamic influences, and the reason, and it developed a very interesting architectural art style, because the Islamic faith decreed that you cannot have certain depictions of things, and so it made it so they couldn't have people, you know, like in its art. If you look at a lot of Catholic, especially, or just a lot of Christian art, over the centuries, it's all people. It's all things like saints and the baby Jesus and the what's it called? You know, Mary and Jesus. There's a name for it, but it has very different art style, which also led to different art style in its architecture versus Islam, which they couldn't have that. You look at Catholic churches and cathedrals and stuff, it's all, you know, there's huge fancy, I mean, they're intricate, but they have things like stained glass, and they have murals and paintings, people, and statues. None of that can be in an Islamic kind of mosque. So they went with a lot of geometric patterns and really intricate things, which I just really personally just like, just for aesthetic reasons. And I need to match the other side, and I'm forgetting where we're going. They just did that for aesthetic reasons. I just looked at the clock and I instantly lost my train of thought. So, trying to explain without losing my mind. So I just really like that style, and I mean, the thing is, the Middle East is not the only desert. There's a lot of places where there have been different kinds of cultures, based off desert cultures, and desert, you know, that have been derived from living in the desert. For example, where I lived, you know, in the U.S. desert is mostly Native Americans, and they were small agriculture kind of people. They didn't have huge. Well, there were places that did have big federations and stuff, like the Iroquois, and that's federations of, you know, groups of smaller things. They didn't have huge cities like, you know, the industrial world developed, or heavily agriculturalized peoples did. Even though, you know, they weren't nomads, and or I can't say everyone wasn't, but the majority of them didn't, you know, settle down, and their ideas of land ownership were very different. So it created a different kind of culture, and at the same, you know, we do have places where there were there were actual like cultures that stayed in one place. One thing I'm thinking of, and that had very unique architectural things like one place I'm thinking of is Four Corners, or Colorado and New Mexico and stuff. There was a group of Native Americans that built into the rock faces of these cliff sides and lived there, and they have very interesting places where they live, and I would actually recommend going to visit them if you ever get the chance. But I think that's more of an outlier versus the majority of people that live in North America. North American deserts. And desert's not a hospitable place, so it's hard to settle down. There's other places like in South America, they're kind of temperate, but there's not as much of a desert. I mean, there is the desert there in Peru. I don't think anyone ever lived there, not that I know. I don't know much about South America, so I'm not going to talk about that. But then there are other places where deserts, like you have the Gobi Desert in Manchuria and China, and people that live there is unhospitable. So the major places where people live that were desert were the Middle East, North Africa, that we know of, like Egypt, Babylon, Iran, Persia. They all had very, they were deserts, but they had very they flourished well. They had rivers and they had very hospitable locations. In the long run, I mean, that's why it's considered the birthplace of humanity, although it may not be. Places like the Twin Rivers, where Babylon is, or somewhere in Mesopotamia, all those kind of arid, deserty places flourished. And going back to university, I'm not only military history. I studied a mix of a lot of ancient history, the classic kind of stuff, Greece and Rome, and also stuff like I studied Japanese history and kind of a bunch of random things like European witch hunts and stuff. And that even the European witch hunts gave me some insight into things like Middle Eastern history. Everything ties together, honestly, because people are looking for people to blame. It just everything historically ties into each other. So yeah, I guess my best explanation is I understand a lot of history. I've studied a lot of history, and so I've been exposed to a lot of exposed to a lot of what is and what exposed to a ton of information regarding desert culture, and it just happened by and by that I enjoy that kind of stuff. So it's easy for me to say, hey, I'm thinking of what should be in the desert, and we're missing Bazaar. Bazaar is a big place. It's where everyone goes to. There's bazaars in all the big cities where people go to shop, and it's they're permanent locations, and we're missing that kind of thing. That's a big part of a culture, and so I decided to build Bazaar, and it kind of started leading me towards I want to build away from having more of a modern, in quote, modern Minecraft city. We don't have certain things we can do, and start going back to building more of the ancient style. So that's why I started pulling stuff from Egypt, North African cultures, going into Babylon and all that. And I think Minecraft lends itself quite a bit more to that kind of architecture. I mean, just look at this. This is what we've done with Minecraft blocks. This is half of a ziggurat, which are, that's a big deal. In Mesopotamian culture, the ziggurat was the main place of like worship and culture, and they built multiple ziggurats for different things. And you have great, there's a bunch of them that exist still, like the Great Ziggurat of Ur. And here, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which is one of the ancient wonders of the world, which may or may not have existed, is theoretically a ziggurat that, since it's a tiered building, kind of like a pyramid, and just a giant garden. So we could build that kind of thing in Minecraft, and hopefully I got my point across and where my creativity comes from. If that didn't make it, it's just I'm kind of a creative person. I did engineering in the past and I hated it I like being abstract with history. I developed an idea of big picture history, which I think is probably refuted now, but how one thing in the past can explain everything in the present. I used to boast about how I could tell you why World War II happened from something that started in the Middle Ages, but everything in the past builds on the present. And as time went on, I became more and more creative, like left-brained kind of person versus a logical. After getting out of the military, I decided that I hated working and I like thinking. Well, I was an officer, so I was paid to think. And that's just me now. I just like thinking, and creativity is just part of who I am. It's always been an artsy kind of person. I liked drawing for a long time. I liked, I do photography now. So it's hard to explain where creativity comes from, but if you aren't looking for inspiration, it's kind of, I sit and think, what's missing in the desert? How are these, what is a desert culture? That's something, I do a lot of look on Wikipedia and stuff because I don't know everything. And especially Google image search helps a lot. But it's kind of that, what are we missing? What should be here? What should it look like? Especially what would be interesting to do with that. Basically start with the general, that's how I do all my building. Start with the general idea, general framework, like how we started this building. It's not shaped anything like it started. Or none of these buildings are. Maybe that kind of is the palace because it's square. But a lot of the other stuff has changed quite a bit. So we're getting short on time here, but hopefully I explained a lot of what the answered. Hopefully I answered that question. I actually could probably talk on that subject a lot more, and I was really considering cutting this episode into 2 parts and just continuing on, but I think I kind of broke my train of thought just now, so maybe we'll talk about it more in the next episode. Once I gather my thoughts again. We did get work done today. Hopefully you saw that. The first floor is nearly done, and we still have stuff to fill in. I have quartz to look for. I've got to figure out these 2 sides here of this. But we are actually really close to building or completing the second floor. Second floor will be done before the first floor is done. And third floor will be, there's not going to be much more to the third floor. This is going to go up to here. This is it. Actually, I might replace those with different stone, but these are going to come down. We're going to have a floor up there. What we're going to have, I originally have a staircase that splits into a Y shape and goes up top. I don't know if I'd like that. We're gonna have to figure that out. But for our next episode, this third floor will be something. I don't know if I actually designed this yet. Top 2 floors are like half the size of the second floor, so these will be easy to do. And then, so let me see. Today's episode 48, 49. Hopefully by episode 49 we'll have the building done. And that means in episode 50 we can start planting and doing that. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode and got to listen to me talk about history tangents and try to explain meaning behind this series. What I'm doing. If I didn't, ask me more questions because that was a good one, and I like the thought-provoking. I like the thought-provoking questions, things that can get me talking for a long time instead of what did I do this week, which is generally nothing. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I don't know if I just said that already, but I'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.